I ticked off the general qualities I desired: single, no older than 30, both the mental and physical stamina to work long hours, and the courage and ability to use fist or gun, and special investigative techniques. I needed a good telephone man, one who could tap a wire with speed and precision. I needed men who were excellent drivers, for much of our success would depend upon how expertly they could trail the mob's cars and trucks, and fresh faces from other divisions who were not known to the Chicago mobsters.
The men were called the Untouchables by one newspaper due to their incorruptibility. Capone's men couldn't bribe them. More importantly, Capone's men couldn't intimidate them. Ness and his Untouchables raided illegal stills and breweries, and within 6 months, Ness estimated that he and his men had seized breweries worth in excess of $1 million. Despite the Untouchables' ceaseless campaign against Capone's operations and the death threats and assassination attempts against Ness and his men, at least one close friend of Ness was killed by the gangsters. Elliot Ness and his men had little bearing on the downfall of Capone's operations. While the Untouchables worked tirelessly on an extensive wiretapping operation and raids of illegal stills and clubs, and to bring Capone up on charges of violations of Prohibition laws, Frank J. Wilson, an agent of the Treasury Department, investigated allegations of Capone's tax evasion, which the United States government thought more likely to bring about a conviction against the mobster. The tactics soon became apparent to Capone, who ordered a hit on Wilson, later called off at the advice of Capone's former mentor, Johnny Torrio, and who was no doubt just as concerned about these investigations, if not more so, than the actions of Elliot Ness and his Untouchables. Capone's concerns were warranted. On October 17, 1931, he was found guilty of 5 counts of tax evasion and failing to file tax returns. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison, 5 of those in the legendary Alcatraz Island Federal Prison. Elliot Ness later was named chief investigator of the Prohibition Bureau in Chicago and later in the state of Ohio. With Prohibition's repeal, he went to work in southern Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee, working as an alcohol tax agent in the Moonshine Mountains before returning to war with the mob in 1938, when he relocated to Cleveland as safety director, in charge of modernizing the city's fire department and cleaning out police corruption, targeting infamous gangsters like Big Angelo Leonardo, Little Angelo Circa, Mo Dalitz, and Charles Palizzi.
There had been a war fought and won, and the great city of the conquering people was crossed with triumphal arches and vivid with thrown flowers of white, red, and rose. All through the long spring days, the returning soldiers marched up the chief highway behind the strump of drums and the joyous, resonant wind of the brasses, while merchants and clerks left their bickerings and figurings and, crowding to the windows, turned their white-bunched faces gravely upon the passing battalions. Never had there been such splendor in the great city, for the victorious war had brought plenty in its train, and the merchants had flocked thither from the south and west with their households to taste of all the luscious feasts and witness the lavish entertainments prepared, and to buy for their women furs against the next winter, and bags of golden mesh and varicolored slippers of silk and silver and rose satin and cloth of gold. So gaily and noisily were the peace and prosperity impending hymned by the scribes and poets of the conquering people that more and more splendors had gathered from the provinces to drink the wine of excitement, and faster did the merchants dispose of their trinkets and slippers until they sent up a mighty cry for more trinkets and more slippers in order that they might give in barter what was demanded of them. Some of them flung up their hands helplessly, shouting, "Alas, I have no more slippers, and alas, I have no more trinkets. May heaven help me, for I know not what I shall do."
In the opening paragraphs of his short story, May Day, F. Scott Fitzgerald criticizes the attitudes of many Americans as the country returned from World War I. Mass marketing and mass production led to a materialistic new outlook, style replacing substance. Everything was becoming mass-produced, even entertainment. Live music could be heard at home, on radios, or on newly pressed cylinders or records. The touring vaudeville theater circuit would be dealt a blow by a new medium, motion pictures. Now, audiences could see comedies, dramas, and adventures brought to life in a grander scale than ever before. Theater owners could show the movie as many times as they wanted, and patrons from the biggest cities to the smallest towns could see the latest fashions and trends and lifestyles that were all the rage in Hollywood and in other cultural centers of the country and the world. Many rebelled against the social shift towards conformity by celebrating anything, anytime, and largely in one place, the speakeasy. The best speaks had touring or house bands, and unlike saloons pre-prohibition, women were welcomed into the clubs.
The Flapper, starring Olive Thomas, Variety, May 21st, 1920. This is the fluffiest sort of fluff, but good summer booking just the same, though any but the best type of houses may find it lacking in dramatic meat. This is due to the delicacy with which Alan Crosland has directed Olive Thomas, who here continues her trip toward film fame. Photographic and laboratory work were of the high class Selznick had led us to expect in his pictures. The story, moreover, is better than this firm's usual run. Frances Marion wrote it, and it concerns the escapades of a schoolgirl. Too strictly brought up, she gets into all sorts of innocent trouble when the chance comes. Some of the titles were humorous in the best sense. All were well thought out and phrased. More interesting than any of the commercial phases of the picture is Miss Thomas herself. Her appeal is the sex appeal. Very sensible, her director has assented to the fact. Miss Thomas has too heavy a makeup in the first reel, and her dresses should not fit so tightly. This light, whimsical story remains, nevertheless, excellent market stuff for the more appreciative audiences.
The 1920s were earmarked by the flapper, the young, short-skirted, bobbed-haired women who eschewed the leftover Victorian societal mores and norms in favor of a freer, fun-filled, and liberal lifestyle. Gone was the idea of a steady beau. Women wanted to have a good time with whomever might have been around.
No matter how beautiful or brilliant a girl may be, the reputation of not being frequently cut in on makes her position at a dance unfortunate. Perhaps boys prefer her company to that of the butterflies, with whom they dance a dozen times an evening. But youth in this jazz-nourished generation is temperamentally restless, and the idea of foxtrotting more than one full foxtrot with the same girl is distasteful, not to say odious. When it comes to several dances and the intermissions between, she can be quite sure that a young man, once relieved, will never tread on her wayward toes again.
Since all speakeasies were illegal, they often enforced no attendance code, permitting women to patronize the bars and clubs of the day. Prohibition also sometimes saw that minorities, like African and Asian Americans, would and could inhabit the speakeasies, drinking and dancing right alongside their white fellow patrons. It was a decade of not only social progress, but of technological progress. On May 20th, 1927, Charles Lindbergh would be the first man to successfully cross the Atlantic Ocean in one uninterrupted flight. During World War I, the flying ace had captured the country's imagination. Now, the dream of flight seemed accessible to the common man.
After Charles Lindbergh's flight, we could do no wrong. It's hard to describe the impact Lindbergh had on people. Even the first walk on the moon doesn't come close. The 20s was such an innocent time, and people were still so religious. I think they felt like this man was sent by God to do this. And it changed aviation forever because all of a sudden, the Wall Streeters were banging on doors looking for airplanes to invest in. We'd been standing on our heads trying to get them to notice us, but after Lindbergh, suddenly everyone wanted to fly, and there weren't enough planes to carry them.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.